Welcome to Speak Up and Stay Alive Radio, how to survive hidden healthcare and hospital dangers with author, speaker, and your host, Pat Rouleau. Pat has over 20 years experience as a professional public speaker, and for the next hour, she's going to be your healthcare and hospital survival guide. Each week, you will say, oh, as Pat exposes and explores little-known hospital hazards, delves into the deep waters of dangerous healthcare practices, picks the brains of her good-looking and influential guests, all guaranteed to keep you and your family safe in today's fragmented healthcare system. The Speak Up and Stay Alive radio program is intended to advance health literacy by making you aware of healthcare and hospital dangers. The program is for informational purposes only and is not intended for use as diagnosis or treatment of a health problem or as a substitute for consulting a licensed medical professional. Participating as a program listener, guest, or caller should not be considered medical advice. References to any entity, product, service, website, or source of information should not be considered as an endorsement. And now your host, Pat Rouleau.
I can't bear again no more, baby. I got too much pride. But I'll survive.
Hello, I'm Pat Rouleau, and I'm so happy to host just this next hour where I will serve you a generous helping of everything you need to know to help you and your loved ones stay safe during any doctor or hospital visit. People ask, who are you? Who am I? I am you. I am every person who has ever been in a hospital or a doctor's office and has received less than acceptable treatment. I am you, the person who got an infection during a simple outpatient procedure. I am you, the patient whose questions are ignored, who struggles to speak to the doctor as he or she has one foot out the door. I am the missed heart attack, the hospital-acquired infection, the wrong diagnosis, and the unanswered call button. This show is not about pointing a finger at hospitals, doctors, or nurses. It's about you, your family, your friends, and your loved ones. It's about becoming informed of all the hospital hazards, what they are, how and why they happen, and what you can do about them. This show is about empowerment. It's about doing everything you can to stay safe during any and every healthcare encounter. Speak Up and Stay Alive Radio, yes, that's OH with an exclamation point, will cause you to say, oh, as each week we delve into little-known hospital and healthcare dangers. When you understand why something happens, you are better equipped to do something about it and prevent it from happening to you. If enough people begin to speak up, together, each of us can alter the current precarious path of today's unsafe healthcare practices. Today, our show is dripping with more gooey, life-saving information than a 4-cheese calzone roasting in a fiery coal brick oven. Ooh, it's gonna be good. And today, we're going beyond the bull, the bull, the bull, the bull, the dangerous dining. Do you really know what is in every bite you take? Well, how could you? If food is not required to be accurately labeled, how can you eat safely? Let's talk a bit about GMOs. A GMO stands for genetically modified organism and is the result of a laboratory process where genes from the DNA of one plant or animal species are extracted and artificially forced into the genes of an unrelated plant or animal. The foreign genes may come from a bacteria, virus, insects, animals, or even humans. Take cotton, for example. The gene for a certain toxin is inserted into cotton, causing cotton to produce this natural insecticide in its tissues. This kills or deters insects, saving the farmer from having to spray pesticides. The plants themselves are toxic, and not just to insects. Farmers in India who let their sheep graze on these cotton plants after the harvest saw thousands of sheep die. Yum, don't you just love the taste of toxic residue? Does this sound like some kind of bizarre sci-fi premise? Oh no, folks, and unless you are especially mindful, you've more than likely been eating these GMOs. First introduced into the food supply in the mid-1990s, genetically modified organisms are now present in the majority of processed foods in the United States. While they're banned as a food ingredient in Europe and elsewhere, the FDA does not even require the labeling of GMOs in foods or the ingredient lists. Way to look out for us, FDA. We'll talk about that in a moment. The main benefit of genetically altering food is to increase herbicide tolerance and to allow the plant to produce its own pesticides. These results have no health benefit, only economic benefit. So what foods are genetically modified? Soy at 94%, cotton 90%, canola 90%, sugar beets, that means sugar, folks, 95%, corn 88%, papaya, zucchini, yellow squash, tomatoes, potatoes, and many more have been genetically altered through biotechnology. And any of the oils from those, including soy protein, cornstarch, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, among others. Why should you care? Well, genetically modified foods have been linked to toxic and allergic reactions, sick, sterile, and dead livestock, and damage to virtually every organ studied in lab animals. The effects on humans are unknown and have not been studied. The chemical company Monsanto, their website states, there is no need for or value in testing the safety of genetically modified foods in humans. Remember, folks, follow the money. Let's talk about the chemical company Monsanto and its ties to the FDA, our food safety net, the Food and Drug Administration. In the early 1990s, the scientific consensus at the FDA was that genetically modified foods were dangerous and might create hard-to-detect allergies, poisons, gene transfer to gut bacteria, and nutritional problems. The FDA's own scientists recommended rigorous long-term testing of these new foods. Well, enter Michael Taylor, the current FDA Deputy Commissioner. Let's follow his path. For over 30 years, Michael Taylor has been part of the toxic revolving door between the public and the private sector. Between 1994 and 96, he was with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, and he was an administrator of the Food Safety and Inspection Service and was influential in the approval of unlabeled genetically modified foods. He then returned to Monsanto to become vice president, then was a professor at various universities, once again returned to government as senior advisor to the FDA, and in 2010 was appointed to another newly created post at the FDA, this time as Deputy Commissioner of Foods, which makes him the second highest ranking individual at the FDA. Under his current tenure at the FDA, he's been involved in the approval of genetically engineered alfalfa and is currently in support of genetically engineered salmon. Does anyone smell any conflict of interest here? Oh, and does anyone remember Obama's campaign promise to require mandatory labeling of genetically modified foods? Just saying. Well, according to Medline Plus, a service of the United States National Library of Science, they list the potential benefits of genetically engineered foods. They include more nutritious and tastier foods, decreased use of pesticides. That's because the plant produces its own pesticides. Faster growing plants and animals. We know we need that. Food with more desirable traits, such as potatoes that absorb less fat when fried. There's a big one. The potential risks they include, say, modified plants or animals may have genetic changes that are unexpected and harmful. And they say that potential extinction of the original organism or other unpredictable environmental effects. Wow. Listen to that. Modified plants or animals may have genetic changes that are unexpected and harmful. Do we really need to hear more? Are we really so short-sighted that we don't care about future genetic changes that are unexpected and harmful or unpredictable environmental effects? Now, here come their recommendations. They say that genetically engineered foods are generally regarded as safe. Well, what does generally mean? And what does safe mean? Then they say there has been no adequate testing to ensure complete safety. Well, okay, then how can they even make the previous statement? Then they say that there are no reports of illness or injury due to genetically engineered foods. Perhaps because genetic mutation doesn't happen after a single lunch. That is just a stupid statement that assumes that we, as consumers, are stupid. We don't have to be geniuses to quickly see the holes in these statements. So what can you do? Well, simply switch brands. According to a website, the Institute for Responsible Technology, even a small percentage of shoppers avoiding genetically modified food brands is enough to trigger an industry-wide cleanout. It's been done before. The Europe Union reached a consumer-driven tipping point in April of 1999, and within 1 week, virtually all major brands publicly committed to stop using genetically modified ingredients in their European brands. This has kept GMOs out of food in Europe. Similarly, consumer concern about possible links to cancer forced Walmart, Starbucks, Kroger, Dannon, Yoplait, and most of the 100 top U.S. dairies to remove products from cows treated with genetically modified bovine growth hormone. Well, here's just a few additional things you can do to eat safely. Buy food labeled 100% organic. And just because something says organic on it does not mean that it does not contain GMOs. In fact, it can still contain up to 30%. So be sure the label says 100% organic. Learn how to understand fruit and vegetable label numbers. This is interesting. If a fruit or vegetable has a 4-digit number, the food is conventionally produced. If it has a 5-digit number beginning with an 8, it is genetically modified. And if it is a 5-digit number beginning with the number 9, it's organic. Look for products that are specifically labeled as non-GMO or GMO-free. Next, you could avoid processed or prepared foods, anything that comes in a box or a bag, including fast food. So keep in mind our topic today when you shop for food. Switch brands, speak up, stay alive. How's that for going beyond the bull? And with that out of the way, let's hear some legal news that you can use. Last week, I met with Allison Mance McMeechan, an attorney at the law office of Schraff & King on Som Center Road in Willoughby, Ohio. If you've listened to this show, you know I'm a big believer in advanced planning of all kinds, but especially when it comes to health care, financial, and other legal matters. Listen as I spend 2 minutes with Allison. Allison, tell me, what is estate planning? It sounds like you have to have a lot of money to consider this.
Pat, an estate plan can include your will, a trust, powers of attorney, advance directives such as healthcare powers of attorney, living wills. And no, you don't have to have a lot of money to have an estate plan. In fact, I think it's the opposite. There are many people who need to have their estate planning for matters other than asset protection. We have many young couples, for example, who are looking to have wills in place so that they can nominate guardians for their minor children. They also may want to prepare a trust so that the assets are not being distributed to the minor children at the young age of 18. So there are a lot of reasons to have an estate plan other than just simply asset protection. From my point of view, I think that just about anyone should look into an estate plan, whether that be financial powers of attorney and naming someone to make financial decisions for you if you're ever incapacitated, or as a young person having a healthcare power of attorney so that perhaps you have reached the age of majority but you'd like to have your parents be able to assist in making healthcare decisions for you if you're unable to do so. There are reasons for just about anyone to consider having a properly drafted estate plan. Oftentimes, I think married couples have poor information in that they believe that as a married couple, they're able to access one another's financial information. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. Individually owned accounts such as retirement accounts, stocks, or life insurance cannot be accessed by a spouse on the basis of being a spouse. So without a power of attorney, you're not going to have access to those assets if your spouse is ever incapacitated.
How can we find out more about Schraff & King?
You can contact us either at 440-585-1600 or on the web at schraffking.com.
Well, thank you for your time today, Allison.
Thank you very much.
If you do nothing else today, give Allison and the folks at Schraff & King a call to review or create your own plan of action. No one plans to fail. They simply fail to plan. You are listening to Speak Up and Stay Alive Radio. I am your hostess, Pat Rouleau. And if you're familiar with this show, you know that I only bring you the most passionate and quality of guests to help you survive any healthcare or hospital encounter. And that speaks to our guest today. Christian John Lillis is Executive Director of the Peggy Lillis Memorial Foundation, a volunteer-led patient safety organization co-founded with his brother Liam following the death of their mother from a Clostridium difficile, which we've talked about in the past, C-diff, infection in April 2010. The foundation works to increase prevention of and minimize death and disability resulting from C. diff infections by educating physicians, patients, and the public, and by advocating for proven solutions within healthcare and public health systems. As a patient safety activist, Christian executive produced the public service announcement, Fight C. diff, and a complimentary educational video. He has been interviewed for several print features on C. diff, including USA Today's groundbreaking August 2012 cover story and published opinion pieces in the Albany Times-Union, Kevin M.D., and many more. Christian, I'm both sad and happy to have you on the show today. Sad because this happened to your family, but happy and proud that you've taken this horrible experience and are using it to help others. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Pat. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, if you don't mind sharing your mom's story, that would be helpful. But first, just in case we have some new listeners, can you explain to us briefly what is C. diff?
C. diff, or Clostridium difficile, is a bacteria. It's called a spore-forming bacteria, which means that outside of the body, the sort of vegetative state of it is this very hardy spore, which is microscopic and invisible to the naked eye. But because of the way in which it exists outside of the body, it is very hard to kill. It's very hard to get rid of it. It can linger on surfaces for 3 to 6 months. It is pretty easily transmittable if people touch a surface that has the bacteria and then put it to their mouths or breathe it in some cases. And in the body, what C. diff does is that it attacks the gastrointestinal system, specifically the colon. By reproducing itself, it gives off these toxins called toxins A and B that are very damaging to the intestinal lining and to the colon. It is known to be the primary cause of what we would consider like hospital-based or healthcare-associated diarrhea. The majority of people who come down with a C. diff infection will have some diarrhea, they might have a fever, but in most cases they will be treated with additional antibiotics and sometimes some other supportive medications, and they will get better. For about 30 to 40% of patients will experience a recurrence, but there is a percentage of cases like my mother's where the strain of C. diff that they get is very toxic and very powerful, and so it can lead to death. We lose about 30,000 Americans every year to deaths from C. diff, and that is more than, at this point, HIV-related deaths or drunk driving deaths. So it is actually becoming quite an epidemic, with about 500,000 people becoming ill every year, and that number has increased exponentially since the 1990s. So it is not as well known as MRSA or pneumonia or some of the other infections we typically associate with hospital stays or healthcare visits, but it is increasingly becoming the one that has the largest death toll.
I appreciate your sharing that information. I have a lot of live speaking events, and I do talk about C. diff surpassing MRSA, and something that our listeners need to know about. So will you share your mom's story with us so we get an understanding of how you came to patient advocacy?
Absolutely. My mother, Peggy Lillis, was a 56-year-old kindergarten teacher. She was a native of Brooklyn, New York. My parents separated when I was 6 and my brother was 3, so she raised us as a single mom with a lot of help from her family. And she put us through school, and she was just a really incredible person. She put herself through school to become a kindergarten teacher, and she also waited tables on the side because, both going through school and then being a kindergarten teacher didn't pay a ton of money. So she was a very popular, very beloved person in our community. At the time that she became ill, she was teaching kindergarten in the Flatbush section of Brooklyn. And what happened was that she went to the dentist for a root canal, and the area with the root canal had a minor infection, had a little bit of an abscess. And so her dentist prescribed clindamycin, which is a very powerful broad-spectrum antibiotic. She took the antibiotic, thought nothing of it. Several days into the course, she came down with diarrhea. She was finishing her master's degree in the evening, so like the Thursday night, she started to not feel well. Overnight, she did have diarrhea that woke her. And so over the weekend, she kind of chilled out. She shared a house with my brother, and so he brought her fluids and food, and she spoke with her doctor on the phone, and he prescribed an antidiarrheal, and she really didn't think much of it. So it was only when the diarrhea persisted through Monday, so this was the fourth day, that we became concerned. And primarily we were concerned that she might be getting dehydrated. She spoke to her doctor again. He scheduled an appointment for her to go see a gastroenterologist. I spoke to her Monday evening and said that I would come and take her to the doctor. And so when I went to her house on Tuesday to take her to the doctor's appointment, she just didn't seem like herself. And so I was primarily concerned that she was dehydrated. So we decided that it would be better to just take her to the hospital. My thinking being that if we take her to the gastroenterologist, they're just going to send you to the hospital if you're that dehydrated. There's nothing they can do in the office. It was once the ambulance got there that we began to be very worried. The EMTs did her vital signs, and her blood pressure was 70/40, which, for those who don't know, is very low. So they did take her to a local hospital, and when she was admitted, they did determine that she was dehydrated, but they did some blood work, and her white cell count was through the roof, which was the first hint that she, had an infectious disease, a bacterial disease. And in short order, the emergency room physicians determined that she had toxic megacolon and that this infection was life-threatening. They said that her kidneys were beginning to shut down, that she was going into septic shock. And I think for a lot of people, even who are reasonably well educated about healthcare, we think about septic shock as being the person's unconscious, or you don't think that someone's up pestering you for a Diet Pepsi. So within the next 12 to 16 hours, they did a colonoscopy. They felt that she would probably need to have her colon removed. They kept her overnight in the ICU, and she was given antibiotics. Before we left the hospital that evening, the surgeon said that if she didn't improve overnight, they would want to do a colectomy first thing in the morning in what he called an attempt to save her life. And so that was the first inkling that we really felt like she could die from this. The next morning at about 6 in the morning, though, the phone rang. It was the surgeon. She had not improved overnight. They decided that she needed to have the surgery. So me and my brother went to the hospital. We signed the consent form. She had the surgery. They told us that there was a chance she wouldn't survive the surgery, but she did. And she came out of it, and she seemed to improve through the morning and into the afternoon. And then around 4 p.m., the ICU doctor told us that her blood did not seem to be oxygenating very well, and they had her on 100% oxygen, and they were worried that she would start to go into organ failure. And so the next couple of hours, things just declined. As I said, my mother was both popular and had a very large Irish Catholic family in Brooklyn, and so I think we probably had something like 40 to 50 people in the ICU waiting area who took turns going in and visiting with her. And around 7 p.m. that night, the ICU doctor came and told us that she had died.
Wow, that is a unbelievable story. She had maybe picked up the C-diff bacterium from the dentist.
We're not entirely sure, and I don't know that we'll ever be sure. It certainly is a possibility. Increasingly, though, we're hearing of more and more community-acquired cases where the doctors can't really figure out what the exact vector is, and they think it's much more out there in the environment in a way that we previously hadn't thought.
Right.
So we're not entirely sure. I mean, though clindamycin and there are several other antibiotics that are known to be precipitators by destabilizing or getting rid of the good bacteria in a person's gastrointestinal system, that they then create the environment that the C. diff can take over. And my mother's dentist did not warn her that was a possible side effect, and I think that that's an area where we need to have a lot more education about, is such a powerful antibiotic necessary in that case? And if it is, and if that's what the doctor thinks is best, then that doctor should also be educating the patient that there is a risk to taking that drug.
Absolutely. So we talk about the bacteria out in the community. People need to wash their hands, use hand sanitizers, especially in the hospital, watch for proper glove and hand protocol. But also anytime someone is taking a course of antibiotics, to be aware that these are some of the risks and possibilities, and maybe have that conversation with their doctors.
A lot of us, and certainly I, until this happened, we thought you just take an antibiotic. At no point in that discussion most often when they're prescribed, are you informed of, like, this is affecting your body? It's not just killing off the bad bacteria that we want to kill off, but it's also affecting other bacteria in your body that you actually need to be healthy. And I think that most people walking around think that bacteria is all bad, and they don't realize the extent to which our bodies and our health relies on good bacteria that exists in our body.
Right, and let's remember the origin of the word antibiotic. Anti is against, bios from a Greek word that means life. So an antibiotic is against life, good and bad. So it's not, it does not discriminate. The tagline of your foundation is fighting C-diff through education and advocacy. So we've talked a little bit about the education aspect of it. Let's talk about the advocacy part of your vision. What are you doing on a personal level to inform and empower patients and people?
So as you mentioned, we've done quite a bit of work around media. We developed about a year and a half ago the first ever public service announcement about C-diff. We're looking to raise the money to get that on television and radio, but it's a pretty expensive proposition. Even with it just being on YouTube and kind of being spread through social media, it's already been viewed by 8,000 people. And we're also constantly out there talking about how patients can be better informed and better protected and sort of be their own advocates and what are the questions to ask. On our website, we have a list of questions that patients should ask when they're going into the hospital to help them be aware of possible C-diff infection or other hospital-acquired infections. And we also have a list of questions that patients should ask when they're being prescribed an antibiotic. So those are some of the things that we're advocating in terms of personal empowerment. I was invited to meet with doctors at the Centers for Disease Control with other patient activists last September. And so we have, started to talk to some of the policymakers in the field about what we think is important and what we'd like to see them do. And one of the things that we talk about a lot, and that is of a huge concern to me and to other people involved in the foundation, is the lack of reliable data on how many C. diff infections there are, how many people are losing to them every year. And that's not particular to C. diff. That's happening across many healthcare-associated infections and also just other forms of patient harm. The CDC does track estimates of C. diff deaths every year, and they most recently have said that they believe that number is around 14,000. Now, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality says that number is 28,000. USA Today investigated it and said that they thought it was about 30,000 a year. So we're getting three different numbers from the same time period depending on the sources. The CDC bases theirs on death certificates. Now, my mother, who died from C. diff, the word C. diff does not appear on her death certificate. And what gets recorded on death certificates and what is then reported, through that process it varies from state to state. Each state has its own laws and its own rules. So to have a national number when you're dealing with various ways that states are reporting it is really difficult to come up. And it's in some states, like California and New York, they've started requiring that hospitals report C. diff cases as well as C. diff deaths. But there's only about 7 states that require it, and it's only required for people that are in the hospital. Doctors' offices don't report it, and most problematic is that nursing homes are not required to report it. And if you ask doctors in the hospital, the majority of their C. diff patients come from, they say, the nursing home. And so if nursing homes aren't reporting it, then we're missing a huge number of people who are ill and possibly dying, but whose death is being ruled from cancer or heart failure or sort of old age, despite the fact that they have this infection that's contributing to their death.
Therein lies the problem. Underreporting, non-mandatory reporting, different levels of reporting, so the numbers are all over the place, and there's not one specific law that requires everyone to follow the same rules. So how can we know what the numbers are? Let's just assume that the numbers are enough that we need to pay attention to this problem. Christian, how can our listeners learn more about you and what you do? Tell us a little about your foundation website so that our listeners can go to that and get more information.
Absolutely. So our foundation is www.peggy.foundation.org. It has the videos that we've made, the educational video, and the PSA. I definitely encourage listeners to go and watch the longer video. It's about 8.5 minutes, but it has interviews with several doctors, with several patients, and survivors of C. diff, because not every presentation is the same. So I think it's useful for people to see a couple of different variations and learn how people dealt with it and how they became to know that they had C. diff. We also catalog stories not in the video, and so we've had several stories from different people across the country who have either died or survived C. diff, and so, again, it's something that's really helpful in terms of people being able to understand just the various ways in which people, whether their symptoms manifest and where they're getting it from. The other thing that we also have on the website that's, I think, very useful is the various treatment options. I think people would find it ironic that the first line of treatment for C. diff is more antibiotics, but it's important that people be informed in terms of what their options are because there are new treatments coming online every day.
It's peggyfoundation.org?
Yes.
Excellent. Do you have any final words of advice for us today to help our listeners?
The only thing I would say is that to be really, really thoughtful if you're entering the hospital or at any point when you're going into to have any sort of serious health procedure done. As specialties grow, the healthcare system is more fragmented, and to the extent that you can, I think it's very useful to have even just a personal patient advocate with you. And I would also encourage people, if you're going to be prescribed antibiotics or any drug, to do your due diligence. There's a great new site called riskrx.org where people can look and find out, what are the potential negative side effects of any drug they take. And for people to keep in mind that any drug you take has risks. And sometimes the benefits of that drug, in most cases, the benefits of taking that drug will outweigh the risks, but we should be informed when we're making those decisions.
That was awesome advice, is exactly what I would say. Christian, I thank you so much for joining us today. I'm hopeful that your experience and your words of wisdom will help our listeners realize the seriousness of this infection and be mindful of it during any and every doctor or hospital visit. And maybe we can come back again and talk about some of those new treatments that are coming down the pike.
Oh, that would be great. I'd love that.
Thank you, Christian.
We interrupt our program to bring you a special broadcast.
For the next 2 minutes, listen as I talk with our in-house infection prevention expert, Darrel Hicks, author of the book, Infection Prevention for Dummies. Darrel, I have a question about antibacterial gels and hand sanitizers. I've heard that they are not effective in killing the C. diff spore if you have that on your hands. Is that correct?
That's correct. You have to use soap and soap and water doesn't kill it, but suspends it into the soap and then rub your hands at least 20 to 25 seconds. And we teach people to sing the happy birthday song. At least that will give you an idea of how many seconds it takes to really do a thorough job of removing those spores from your hands. And just because people wear gloves doesn't mean that they are protected. The first line of defense for protecting yourself or for making sure your hands are clean is that you have to wash with soap and water. But the gel, the alcohol-based hand sanitizers are not effective against the C. diff spore. A lot of times you'll see them either put something over that sanitizing dispenser in the patient's room if it's a C. diff isolation so that people don't have a false sense of security by using that to clean their hands with.
What gets rid of it, or at least keeps it at bay, is good old-fashioned hand washing.
Yep, it's the best advice your mother ever gave you.
Yay.
Wash your hands.
Darrel, so much information. How can our listeners learn more about you and what you do?
Well, they can visit my website, and that would be Darrel at darrelhicks.com, and there's a lot of information on there, and they can order the book there, but they can also submit questions to me, and I usually answer those the same day that I get them. So if anyone has a particular question they want to submit to me, I will get back to them right away.
Well, thank you so much, Darrel, for sharing this important information with us today. Your book, Infection Prevention for Dummies, is necessary for anyone who wants to promote well-being and prevent infections, especially in a healthcare setting. Thank you for being here today. I'm sure we're going to have many more questions of you in the future. You are listening to Speak Up and Stay Alive Radio. Now, you can join us every Saturday morning on two Cleveland stations from 7 to 8 Eastern on AM 1420 WHK and from 9 to 10 Eastern on AM 1220 WHKW and on Sundays in Phoenix, Arizona from 9 to 10 Mountain Time on AM 960 KKNT, The Patriot, or listen to us live online from anywhere in the world at the station's websites. I am your hostess, Pat Rouleau. So happy to spend this hour with you to help you survive any healthcare or hospital encounter. Oh, folks, these two crazy guys are waving their ice cream cone-shaped squeaky dog toys at me. Oh, yeah. There we go. I guess that can only mean one thing. They are ready to head over to the game chamber and play the most requested radio game ever. Right, Jeremy?
I believe I do have some statistics that will back that up.
Thank you. Squeak up and stay alive. The game started innocently enough when I mentioned a few weeks ago that the squeaky wheel gets the grease and how we can easily transfer that idea to a hospital stay. Here's how it goes. I will read a question from our squeaky question chamber. And Bob and Jeremy will squeeze their squeaky toys when they think they know the answer. The first one to squeak will get the chance to pick the next category of questions with the hopes of winning the grand prize. The winner gets to keep their ice cream cone-shaped squeaky dog toy and the coveted and fabricated championship belt. Bob has laid claims to the chocolate cone. Let's hear your squeak, Bobby. Jeremy has the vanilla cone. Oh, it's the best tiny squeak. All right, you radio rivals, are you ready to play everyone's favorite new game, Squeak Up and Stay Alive?
Yeah, let's get it on.
Let's do this.
All right, you say it every week. Here are the three categories. What we talked about on today's show, healthcare-acquired infections, when dangers are strangers, and we're going to add the grab bag again. All righty, Bob won the pre-game toss, so he begins. What category do you want to start out with, Bobby?
I'm going to live dangerously and go with dangers are strangers.
All righty. The Squeak Up and Stay Alive. Question number 1. When this danger is a stranger, you may experience high blood sugar levels even though you never had high levels before. Bob.
That has got to be hospital-induced stress-induced diabetes.
Yes, that is correct, Bob. Good. Not many people know that medications and stress can cause blood sugar levels to rise during a hospital stay. Know what your baseline sugar level is and make sure it is monitored throughout your hospital stay. All right, Bob, you got the point and get to choose the next category.
Well, I'm going to switch from that and go to the grab bag.
All right, it's always a tough question. Here we go. The Squeak Up and Stay Alive grab bag question number 2. True or false? Tai Chi may reduce falls among adult stroke survivors. Bobby.
I'm going to say that is false.
Oh, no, Bob. Stroke survivors experience 7 times as many falls each year than healthy adults, and studies have shown that Tai Chi can improve balance. If you haven't tried Tai Chi, I encourage you to look into it. I love it. And you don't have to be a stroke survivor to get positive results. The main benefits are better balance, improved strength, flexibility, and aerobic endurance, as well as an excellent and easy way to reduce depression, anxiety, and stress. So for a better quality of life, try Tai Chi. So no one gets the point. And Jeremy, you get to choose the next question.
All right, I liked when dangers are strangers category. So, yep, I'm going back to that one.
All righty, the Squeak Up and Stay Alive question number 3. When this danger is a stranger, a patient will take any medication given to him or her without asking questions. Bobby.
Well, that's got to be medication errors.
Yes, that was obvious. The statistic is this. Every patient is subjected to at least one medication error per day. How crazy is that? The solution? Keep a detailed list of your medications. Know what they look like, the dosages and what they're for. And always inquire before you ingest. So Bob gets the point and controls the category. What do you want, Bobby?
I'm going to try something different. Let's go to what we talked about on the show today.
Okay. The Squeak Up and Stay Alive question number 4. We can avoid genetically modified foods by doing several things. Name one. Oh, Jeremy, you're fast.
Buy foods that are labeled 100% organic.
You got it. And you can and should read labels, Jeremy. You can shop local, buy foods that are specifically labeled non-GMO, and just be smart and mindful about what you put into your body. Jeremy, you got the point and control the category.
All right, it's been good to me, so let's stick with today's show.
All righty, the Squeak Up and Stay Alive question number 5. Many people get C-diff because of the indiscriminate and overuse of what? Jeremy.
All right, I think I'm on a roll. Antibiotics?
You're on a roll, yes. And our guest today, John Lillis, talked about this. Please, folks, take the time to know about the C-diff bacterium and especially ask questions before you take any antibiotics. What are the side effects? Does the reward warrant the risk? Ask questions. So, Jeremy, you get the point and get to choose the next category.
All right, let's jump over to healthcare-acquired infections.
All right, mixing it up again. Here we go. The Squeak Up and Stay Alive question number 6. What is the germiest object in a hospital room? Jeremy.
The toilet?
No, you would think so. You would think so. But according to Dr. Chuck Gerba, a microbiologist who appears on our show often, he says that the TV remote carries 3 times more bacteria than the toilet flush handle, the bed rails, and the doorknobs. So before you start switching channels, switch your mind into being mindful. Put on a pair of hospital gloves and clean the remote with a bleach wipe and slip the TV remote into a baggie. Baggies are a great resource. Bring them with you during any hospital stay. Well, no one gets the point, and you guys, you're all tied up 2-2. You guys better pay attention, all right? You radio rivals?
Go for it.
All right. Bobby, you get to choose the final category.
I'm going to confuse Jeremy and go to the grab bag.
All right. Get your squeakers ready, because here's the final question. The Squeak Up and Stay Alive grab bag question number 7. Sociologists found a direct relationship between obesity and the duration and frequency of hospital stays. Jeremy.
That sounds like it makes sense. I'm going to say true.
You are right. That is true. Researchers found that on average, obese persons stayed 1.5 days longer than those with normal weight. The researchers also note that the longer a person has been obese, the more likely their hospital stay is lengthened. So no more cake and brownies for you, Jeremy.
Oh, no.
But you did it, Jeremy. You're the winner.
And I would like to give myself a round of applause.
Okay.
Thank you, audience. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Clapping today. How about that? What do you think, Bob?
I'm losing my pants.
Oh, gosh, yes. That fabricated championship belt. Well, guys, you're both winners because think about how much more you know about being a safe patient. And our listeners are winners, too. Well, thank you, Radio Rivals, for playing our exciting game of Squeak Up and Stay Alive. Let's give ourselves a round of squeaks. Remember, folks, the point of this game is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Or in this case, the squeaker gets the prize. So feel free to speak up or squeak up at every doctor or hospital visit. That's the best and the only way to get the attention and service you deserve. Coming up, more of what you've come to expect from America's favorite healthcare and hospital survival radio show, Speak Up and Stay Alive Radio. On this show, we talk about the need for a patient advocate during every healthcare or hospital encounter. But advocacy also includes whom you rely on when it comes to health insurance. Listen while I spend the next 2 minutes with Chris Alberta, the Medicare supplement partner with Generation America, as we discuss the importance of choice. Chris, can you tell us how are you and Generation America different when it comes to choosing a Medicare supplement plan?
They're doing something, Pat, that is really unique. As opposed to looking for an opportunity to hook up with one carrier or a company with a couple of products, what they said to us was, how can we offer everybody who's a member of our organization basically a menu? Many people don't know this, is all these Medicare plans, most of them are exactly the same coverage. The only difference is the price that you pay. And so what our organization does anyway is that we work with probably upwards of about 50 different programs and carriers around the country, which is most of them. And Generation America hooked up with us and said, listen, how can we show our members every single program that's available in their zip code and then really break it down according to age and price so they never end up overpaying?
At what age should a person begin to seek out this information, and when can they enroll in a Medicare supplement plan?
Yeah, good question. Only people who are on disability start Medicare plans before 65. So the majority of people, about 64 and a half, their mailbox just gets filled to the brim with stuff from every carrier and every product on the planet. Now, Medicare does something unique. They offer what's called the open enrollment period, which is different than the annual period that comes around each November, December. And during that open enrollment period, a person can choose any supplemental plan they want, and regardless of their health conditions or pre-existing problems, they can choose whatever plan and go right on it and get the best rate. You only get that open enrollment period, Pat, one time. So really, at 64 and a half, you got to start looking. By 65, you should be enrolled in something. So it's really, really cool to say to people, look, I know you got a mailbox full of stuff. They all say they're the best. Really, the best one for you is the one that costs the least. Anybody can grab you with a low price right off the bat, but you don't want to be doing this process every 6 months.
That is great advice. So rather than sifting through all that mail when you're 64 and a half, our listeners can purchase the proper Medicare supplement for their unique situation through Generation America. How can our folks do that?
Well, the website generationamerica.org is the main portal. That's the front door, really, for that team.
Well, thank you for spending the time to clarify Medicare supplements with us today, Chris.
No problem, Pat. Thanks for having me. It's a really great opportunity.
Remember, folks, Generation America is on the right side for seniors. For more information or to join, visit generationamerica.org. You're listening to Speak Up and Stay Alive Radio every Saturday morning in Cleveland, Ohio, and every Sunday morning in Phoenix, Arizona. I am Pat Rouleau, your hostess and author of the book, Speak Up and Stay Alive, the Patient Advocate Hospital Survival Guide, available at all of our live speaking events or at our website, speakupandstayalive.com. That's where you can also locate show times and dates and radio station information. That's speakupandstayalive.com. Well, today we talked about genetically modified foods and why we must pay attention to our food sources. Do you want to make a difference? Simply switch brands. Stop buying foods that are genetically altered. Money talks. And our guest, John Lillis, shared so much valuable information about the C-diff bacterium as he shared his mom's sad story. Let's take heed, folks, and be mindful of this deadly situation. And since we have some time, let's take 60 seconds and listen to his public service announcement.
My mom was a great person, loving, caring. She would do anything for anybody, you know.
We had spoken and she said she wasn't feeling well. She was having, very bad diarrhea. As soon as we got to the emergency room, within, I would say, an hour or so, we knew things were not what we thought.
They later told us that she had a bacterial infection called Clostridium difficile, which I had never heard of.
Certainly several 100,000 people contract C. diff every year. In terms of deaths, over 25,000 deaths a year.
C. diff and C. diff infections are largely preventable.
People don't have to die from this, you know? No family needs to go through what we went through. There's absolutely no reason for it. Please join our movement to fight C. diff.
Go to peggyfoundation.org.
Christian and his brother Liam, they made this to create awareness about C. diff. It's a beautiful thing that survivors become activists and help educate and inform in an effort to spare others from their experience. If you or someone you know would like to memorialize and create a legacy for someone, we can honor them with a year-long Speak Up and Stay Alive radio program in their name, just like the hour-long program you heard today. What a beautiful way to pay tribute to a life by helping others live theirs. Now, if you missed some of today's show, you are taking a crazy risk. When you join us each week, you may be adding years to your life or to the life of someone you know and love. So set your alarm clocks for Saturday and Sunday mornings and tune in. And if you want to hear the show again, you can replay it for yourself or a friend in need. Simply go to the radio link at the speakupandstayalive.com website to listen to today's program. You might want to do that anyway, just to help you remember more of today's exceptional information. Oh, and be sure to listen next week. In fact, right now, mark your calendars for Easter weekend. That's next weekend's show. We've got one special show in store for you. It's our first ever Squeak Up and Stay Alive call out, a marathon of sorts with callers answering our famous Squeak Up questions. And what a group we had here. One gal really got in the spirit, and she gave us cat calls, chicken clucks, and turtle dove impressions. I can't even go there right now. You'll just have to tune in. That's next Saturday morning, where you could find us in Cleveland, Ohio, from 7 to 8 Eastern on AM 1420 WHK, and from 9 to 10 Eastern on AM 1220 WHKW. And Sunday morning in Phoenix, Arizona, you can listen from 9 to 10 Mountain Time on AM 960 KKNT, The Patriot. Or listen live via the internet. Check the SpeakUpAndStayAlive.com website to find out how. In the meantime, I hope you have a happy and a healthy week. I am Pat Rouleau, and I am your guide to safe and successful healthcare and hospital encounters.
The information provided in today's broadcast is for informational purposes only and was not intended for use as diagnosis or treatment of a health problem or as a substitute for consulting a licensed medical professional. If you missed part of today's show or just want to share the information with friends, you can download a copy of the show at SpeakUpAndStayAlive.com. That's SpeakUpAndStayAlive.com. Want even more information? Purchase a copy of Pat's book at the Speak Up and Stay Alive website. Once again, it's SpeakUpAndStayAlive.com.
This is Pat Rouleau. When you get a chance, become a friend and like us on Facebook. We're called Speak Up and Stay Alive. Then post your questions and comments on our Facebook wall. We may read them next week. Who else do you know who can benefit from this life-saving information? You can keep your group, club, business, or church safe from hospital hazards. I speak live and in person, too. Our events are fun, fast-paced, interactive, and jam-packed with serious information. Your crowd will love it. Just email me at speak@speakupandstayalive.com or call 440-725-5462. Until next week, remember to ask others to wash their hands. You have to speak up and stay alive. Call me, email me.
I'll survive.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Generation America supports Speak Up and Stay Alive. Generation America, the smart, conservative, and traditional 50-plus membership organization. Generation America cares what their members think about the issues affecting seniors and ensure their voices are heard. And they provide a full range of benefits to members. For instance, if you're looking for a quality Medicare supplement, their rates are lower than the other 50-plus organization 3 out of 4 times. Generation America, on the right side for seniors. To join and to find out more, visit generationamerica.org.